Hey everybody, this is Braxton with Birds and Bees Podcast. I'm really excited that you're a part of this special part of Birds and Bees Podcast, which is a collaboration between Sex Therapy 101 with Cami Hurst. I think you're going to really enjoy this. This is a different aspect of talking about sexual health. It's all about books that have come out that are particular to sexual health, and it interacts with you as the listener. If you'd like to read along, we're coming out with them once a month, but you can listen to the podcast and read, or you can read and then listen to the podcast. Either way, I would love to hear your thoughts on things that we hit, things that you think we may have missed, what your takeaway was in each of these books. And you can send me a message at birdsandbeespodcast@gmail.com. I would love to hear from each one of you, especially what you liked about the episodes, as well as what books you may want to have us review with the Sexy Book Club. We're going to have more and more episodes come out with interviews, as well as individual ones with me presenting information to you, and also these Sexy Book Clubs. So if you'd like to support the podcast, one of the direct ways you can do that is by Venmoing me, Braxton Dutson, BraxtonDutson. That is just one word, no dots, no hyphens. Any and all help support by paying for what it takes to have the episode up online, website fees, as well as audio and time that it takes to put all this stuff together. Every little bit helps keep this podcast going. I hope all of you are staying safe and looking forward to hearing what you think about these episodes. So without further ado, let's jump into the Sexy Book Club rendition of Birds and Bees Podcast.
Hey, listeners.
Hey, everybody. This is Braxton with Birds and Bees Podcast and
Cami Hurst with Sex Therapy 101.
We're bringing you a really cool episode. In fact, we're going to hopefully do more of these episodes as time goes on. This is our Sexy Book Club.
Yeah. Special episode, Sexy Book Club.
Oh, yeah. So what we're going to be doing within the premise of this is to be able to read over a book over a month, put out an episode where we discuss the book, go over main topics and points, and have you as the listeners be able to email us or interact with us in a different way that you can actually have questions that you can send to us throughout the month, and we can discuss it in the next episode. But mostly we're real excited for me and Cami to be able to talk more about sexual health in a way that comes in the form of literature.
Yeah, it's so fun to collaborate this way.
Oh, yeah.
Anytime I can collaborate with Braxton, I want to. So, super fun.
It is so. I've been so excited for this. So we've been prepping for a couple months now, and this first book that we're going to be talking about is Come As You Are, and we've got another book that's coming up, and we'll tell you that at the end of this episode, so you can start reading and get prepped for the next month.
Yeah, the goal is to release every fourth Tuesday a review of one of these really cool sexual health books.
Oh, yeah.
Hence the name Sexy Book Club. And
we've looked into a lot of these books. I go to sex therapy conferences and see all the books, and I want to read all the books. And this is also another drive for me to actually read the books. And we also thought of doing this in Audible because I'm not the best at reading per se. Like I really indulge when I start to read, and so I read slower. But if I can listen to the book, I do a whole lot better with engaging through auditory. So we're gonna keep these books hopefully as close to Audible for those of you that like to listen versus read.
Yeah, that's how I incorporate it. I'm driving a lot.
Oh yeah.
I'm not reading a lot. So that's usually how I'll approach a book is I'll listen to it, and then in my office I order both. So I'm kind of double dipping. Like I'll buy the Audible book and then I'll also buy the actual book, because then I'll go and I'll like highlight where I liked so that when I pull off my shelf with a client, I'll remember the point.
Yeah.
So I'm probably, like these production companies' team's dream lady, because I will buy both versions of the books.
And I think I own all these books too in physical copy, and I'm going to be getting it in Audible as well.
Yeah.
I think it's because I have high hopes and dreams. I start to think that I'm like, if I buy it, then I'll glean it through just osmosis. Yeah. And I have a hard time reading them in person or like physically. So now that I'm doing Audible, so much better than when I'm trying to read it by myself.
Yeah, I'm surprised that I'll go through about a book a week in my car, just doing my normal thing if I've got it on. So pretty interesting.
Yeah.
So if we can do it, you can do it, listeners.
Absolutely. So this, like we said, this month we're doing Come As You Are by Emily Nagoski. Now, if you haven't heard of this book, this is I probably recommend this book to my clients more than any other book.
Me too.
Couples, individuals. This is one for you too?
This is the number one.
The number one, yep. And the reason, what is it that you like so much about this book?
What I like about the book is it's really easy to read. So she takes science in the back. You can read all of the studies if you want to, but she takes those studies and makes them really easy to understand and incorporate.
Absolutely. One thing I really like is that she brings her personality into it. She actually reads the book on Audible. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I've watched her in person, and she's kind of a spaz, and I love it.
Because she's an educator.
Oh, yeah.
You know, that's her thing.
Sex educator.
She's a sex educator. Let's go back about who she is. And a researcher. Mm-hmm. Kind of all of our heroes. Right now, as far as her bio goes, Nagoski, Nagoski. She's a director of wellness at Smith College, where she teaches women's sexuality. Has a PhD in health behavior, a minor in human sexuality, master's degree in counseling, with a clinical internship at Kinsey Institute. I mean, you don't really get more expert than that.
Absolutely. Especially being at Kinsey Institute. Woo.
Right.
Woo. That's not easy to get into, and to have so much experience. You've got the sexual world and sexual resources to research, to study. They're at the top of the game.
Mm-hmm. And she's super approachable.
Oh, yeah. So she was awesome when she was at the Rocky Mountain Sex Summit just a couple years ago. In fact, I want to say it was the first Rocky Mountain Sex Summit. So yeah, it was probably 3 years ago. When she was presenting, it was interactive, and she's, like I said, she's spunky. Mm-hmm. So she's a great educator. One thing that as we talk about what the book main point is, I think we could really, usually it's hard to sum everything up into a sentence or two, but this one, I think straightforward, tell me if you agree with me, Cami, the main topic is you're normal.
You're normal.
You are normal.
And we've got science to prove it.
Yeah. Yes. That's the beautiful part. We're all so nervous about if we're good or not.
Yeah. There's so much reflection of, am I doing this right? Am I okay? And you're not broken. Yeah. You're totally normal. Let's learn about you and work with it to get what you want.
Absolutely. So if we're going to take nothing else away from this, the sum is you're normal. Sexually, especially when we're talking about sexually, your body parts, the way you think, the way you act, what you want, it's normal.
And a lot of times when I give this to a lower desire partner, they'll be like, yes, I'm normal. But the partner's still thinking, I just don't think you're normal. Mm-hmm. So I really like partners to read the book together so that they come to that conclusion. Oh, you're not broken, together.
Yes, exactly. That it's not. How often do you have clients come in and they don't say this, but the vibe is, okay, one of us is wrong, and the other one is right where we need to be. So I either need to stop wanting to have sex as much as I want, or my partner needs to increase their libido, and that's what we're paying you to do, is to increase that.
And a lot of times I'll see the higher desire partner thinking, I'm here to support them in their journey to change, so they'll be like me. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes. I'm like, wait a minute. That is such a power dynamic that we need to unbalance right from the start. That this isn't you're sitting there being supportive until they get the change they need and match you. It's much more interactive. Both people have a responsibility here in this process. So.
Yes, very much so.
Yeah.
So I agree. I think both people reading the book is very important. And this is for everybody. This is not just a heterosexual conversation. This is in polyamorous and homosexual, whatever relationship you find yourself in, this is extremely relevant to you.
Totally relevant. Totally relevant.
Let's talk a little bit about some of the main points then. So we're gonna pop through the book as we talk about some of. It's not necessarily going to go chapter by chapter, but some of big main points. And I think the first one that Cami you pointed out was essentially she starts off with all the same parts, just organized differently.
Yeah, and the cool thing about our book is it comes with a PDF
Yeah.
So if you do the Audible, you're going to want to look at the PDF, especially here with these all the same parts organized differently. She starts off with the science in utero, where our genitals are the same parts, but as we evolve, they develop differently.
Yeah.
Right? So she gets really clear about the female anatomy, how, the clitoris, just the penis it evolved out of the same tissue with the same nerves and so it really makes us feel more the same instead of we are drastically different.
Yeah, and I think that it helps answer a lot of questions about genitalia that maybe you're not quite sure of, like why the scrotum has like a line that runs down the center of it. Well, that's where
the two labia fused in utero.
Absolutely.
Where in female, it didn't fuse.
Yep.
It stayed separate.
And it all just depends on the different washing of, I think what you say, a
Hormones.
washover of hormones.
Yeah, hormone wash. I pictured it like a car wash.
Yep, it was like whoosh, and you just come out with different genitalia.
Yeah. So same parts organized differently, and it really breaks down, hey, you're normal and you're beautiful and it's great.
Yes.
So women who are not super comfortable with their genitalia, she encourages you to get comfortable with it. We all look different.
Yeah.
Clitoral heads sizes vary greatly.
Yep.
Inner labia vary from thin to flowery. Right? To plump so there's all this variation, and a lot of women are like, I really don't want to know.
Yeah, and we're not talking. So I would say that for those of you who may have grown up in a more orthodox religion or in a more conservative state or community, or in just even a conservative or a household that doesn't talk so much about this, is that there's an easier buy-in to what you have seen. So maybe if you've stumbled onto pornography or you're an avid consumer of pornography, then there's a chance that you start comparing yourself to what you're seeing on TV, which is akin to looking at your body and saying, okay, well, I watched Brad Pitt on the big screen and I'm supposed to look like that. Or and Angelina Jolie, we just watched Mr. and Mrs. Smith and like we're supposed to look like that. And that's the dangerous part of what I'd say with societal norms, is that we take what's entertaining, be it pornography, be it Fast and Furious, whatever videos you're watching, and then we say, this is what we're supposed to be. Yeah, that's normal.
Wait, that's how a vulva looks? Well, mine doesn't look like that.
Exactly.
No, it doesn't, because it wasn't digitally or surgically altered.
Absolutely. Same with men. We're like, oh my gosh, how... I'm going to get in this relationship. Should I be like 6 feet long? I don't know. Or even if we're like 8 to 10 inches, it's like, oh, this is huge and I'm not like that. And so am I going to, and size matters. And we hear this over and over, when in reality, we're all within that realm. There's a spectrum.
At the heart, this book is a radical self-acceptance book.
Yes. And she puts it in your face. She really has you look at it.
You're normal. You're great. This is all perfectly normal, healthy, functional, wonderful.
Yes. And even if things might be different from person to person, all the same parts, just organized differently.
Yeah, that's the main part I love. So that part is super helpful. Even when you're doing education with parents and kids, Braxton, the graphics, the drawings in the book, I'd sit down with my daughter and be like, these are the parts. These are different variations. This is all normal. This is all beautiful.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea to do that. My partner, she also listened to the book with me, and now I can't get her to stop saying like brakes and accelerator and like.
Yeah, that's the next main point. Tell us what she means.
And what I mean by that is I love that you're saying sit down with your kids and talk about it. Sit down with your partner and talk about it too. And she just saw it pop up in our feed and started listening to it. So one day she's like, "Oh, that sounds like your brakes." I was like, "Wow, okay. How do you?" Okay. So she's talking about brakes. Essentially, what we're saying is certain things in a contextual situation will tell you, in turn, tell your body. Your body's constantly searching for, is this sexually relevant and something I should feel turned on for? Or is this not sexually relevant or something that I should turn off for? And so when we're talking about the brakes, we're typically talking about, oh, this may be sexually relevant, but I don't want to engage in sexual experiences right now, or it's not appropriate, or I could be in trouble, or I could get hurt, or...
Which I call wisdom.
Wisdom, yes.
There is wisdom in our system having brakes and accelerators. If I'm being chased by a lion, it is not a good time to stop and get busy.
Yeah.
Okay? So there's some wisdom here. And so I'll explain it to my clients as like, it's a car. We have gas and we have brakes. And you can be stomping as hard as you want on the gas saying, this should work. Yes. I thought this place on your neck was your,
yes.
This should work. These are your accelerators. Stomping on that. But if I've got an emergency brake on, I'm just going to spin out in the driveway.
Yep.
We're going to do some damage to the engine. We're all going to end up frustrated.
Yeah.
So the goal with these brakes and accelerators is first remove the brakes. Then we can apply the accelerators. And I find higher desire partners find that fascinating. Mm-hmm. Because usually higher desire partners have more sensitive accelerators and less sensitive brakes, or it's easier for them to take their foot off the brake and easier for them to put their foot on the gas. Mm-hmm. Whereas lower desire partners tend to have the opposite, where it's harder to take their foot off the brake and a little harder to put their foot on the gas.
Yeah.
And it's both completely normal.
Completely.
Neither of these people have a personal deficit. It's just a problem on the table. We're going to take this seriously. We're not going to take it personally. Mm-hmm. And that's what I like about using sexual brakes and accelerators with couples.
Well, and sometimes you don't even need to. It's not an either or. What I've noticed with clients is that typically when we start focusing on how to take off the brakes, the gas has been pushed just enough anyways.
Yeah.
It doesn't need to be floored. It doesn't need to go from one end of the spectrum to the other. But typically we're looking at taking off the brakes. For example, I think one of the things that I notice the most is when we are looking at new parents or we've had kids over a certain amount of years, and then we're saying that our sex life has changed, and she's had low libido most of the time. I've had higher libido, and now it just seems like it's non-existent. When we start looking at what the brakes are, what context is within your room? What does do we have dirty laundry by the bed? Did you guys just have a fight? Are the kids constantly coming in? How many hours of
sleep have you had?
Yes. Sleep is a huge deal.
How much have you been touched and pulled on and climbed on over the last 24 hours?
Yeah. How young are the kids? Are kids constantly... how much time have you had for yourself versus being with a partner, being with kids? Mm-hmm. Those are all things that can push on the brake.
Yeah.
So we're just looking on ways, how can we start to take those off? Mm-hmm. Thinking of me and my partner, we're looking at what her brakes are and what my brakes are too. And also thinking of brakes, I always like going back to this thought of how for many male-bodied individuals being in, if you can think back to probably middle school, junior high math class, when all of a sudden you have an erection out of nowhere and you're like, no.
Nothing happened.
No.
How is this happening?
The Pythagorean theorem is not sexy.
What is wrong with me?
And then you get called to go up to the board and you're like, okay, now I got another problem to deal with. Mm-hmm. In those times, I love that you're saying, like, this is great that we have those breaks. Typically at that time, it's like, is everything sexual? Yeah. And that tends to be a common report for male-bodied individuals. Not for everybody, but you may look at that, and in those situations, the body typically wants to read, I may be turned on right now, but right now is not appropriate. We're in the middle of math class.
Right.
Same ordeal when it comes to being at home. Now, if there are stressors, dishes, got to get things done, what are we doing tomorrow, and those are up in your head, that is a turnoff. That will turn my brakes on. It hits my brakes when I'm thinking of what needs to be done, what actions need to be done, if I've got work-related stressors that are going on, whatever it may be. Those are part of my brakes. I know that there's certain aspects of my partner that also experiences her brakes. But when we come down to it, I know that some of the things that help take the brakes off is when she's relaxed and in the moment. So one of the biggest things that goes for us is, like, I know that if I offer her a bath, if I'm like, hey, I'm going to take care of the dishes, I'm going to go do this, I'm going to go do that, go take go take a 10-minute bath or go take a 30-minute bath, and she's taking care of herself, maybe accompanied by a foot massage or things like that. I know those things. It's not a X plus B equals C. It is, I understand that X, her relaxing, with B, maybe a foot massage, continues to take off those brakes. And typically, she's got more of an accelerator in that responsive space of relaxation.
Yeah, you got to take off this emergency brake. And I find a lot of partners this idea will lower their anxiety, especially for couples coming from the framework that if you love me, you will be sexually attracted to me, or if you love me, we will have a lot of sex. Mm-hmm. So this breaks that myth down, because it's not that you don't want me, it's your emergency brake is on really good, honey.
Oh, yeah.
And it doesn't have a lot to do with me or your feelings about me. The context is just not right for sexuality in your life right now. Mm-hmm. And we can make it a lot less personal. And when we kind of take things a lot less personal, we can lay it on the table as a problem to be solved.
Yeah. I think one of the things to in the book that we're talking about is she talks about some of this context, and also the one of the things that can be on our brakes is that what we've seen and what we've been taught and indoctrinated with our sexual health. One of the things that can be a break is if we think that sex is dirty and bad and something we shouldn't be engaging in unless we're looking to procreate for kids. And we can get these thoughts behind us of be a man, or don't be a slut, or this is too much, or this is too little, and this equals bad or good. And if we have sex this much, that's a good relationship. If we don't, then it's a bad relationship. And all those things start to hit shame, and shame is a huge culprit of the brake applier.
Mm-hmm. Shame and anxiety.
Absolutely. Anxiety.
And usually they're sisters.
Yeah. Yes.
So you've got both, right?
Right with each other.
And those are desire killers.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's talk a little bit about context. I mean, even more about context. We've been talking about it the entire time, but one of the things that I think she breaks it down into 3 parts here, with expecting, eagerness, and enjoying. Mm-hmm. And it took me a couple times to really grasp those concepts, essentially meaning expecting equals anticipation, eagerness is wanting, and enjoying is liking. And you can experience all 3 of those or not experience them in a sexual experience. You may be expecting or anticipating sex, but not have any eagerness or enjoyment.
That's a lot of the typically females I work with. There's a high expectation for sex with a low desire, which leads to not enjoyment, dread.
Yes.
Right?
Absolutely.
So if you've got a negative view of the expectation, that's going to lead to a negative anticipation, which is going to lead to decrease in pleasure. Those 3 is, what framework do we have? Do we have a positive framework for all 3 of those? Do we usually have a negative framework for all 3 of those? Mm-hmm. So piece those out for us, Braxton.
Yeah. So if we're looking at, I like that you've pieced out one of those where the expecting is the part where we're having an issue. Maybe you're wanting. I also get a lot of people saying, I want to have sex and I can't. I just don't. Mm-hmm. So the anticipation, the eagerness, the expecting may not be there because it's just not on the brain, but the wanting is, and maybe we don't have that pleasure, or the enjoying or the liking. But whether we're in one of those or the others, we just need to check in with ourselves on expecting, eagerness, and enjoying, or anticipation, wanting, and liking.
Yeah, where's that erotic block coming from?
Yes.
Am I blocked at anticipation? Or am I blocked at the wanting? Or am I blocked at the pleasure?
Absolutely. And so if we're blocked at the pleasure, so that when you come in to see me as a sex therapist, these are some of the things I'm asking for right off the bat. Like, I don't want to have sex. Okay, tell me, what has sex been like for you? I just had a couple that came in, and right off the bat, they're like, yeah, sex has been painful. He's too big for me, essentially. And I asked more of what too big means and everything, but we come down to it sounds as though there's pain, discomfort, and that her cervix was being hit.
She had a relaxed cervix.
Yeah. And that's painful. Mm-hmm. And for years, they've been having penetrative sex, and she's been enduring this pain, which typically starts the body up and going, I don't want to do this. I don't enjoy
There's no reward. Why would I want something that has a negative impact on me.
Absolutely. So that was one of my first explorations with them, is like, okay, we need to first off take pain off the table for sex. Unless pain is desired,
Sure.
pain needs to be off the table.
Sure.
So we started addressing that. We getting into wanting. Doesn't really have a desire for wanting. She does anticipate it, but is anticipating through his anxiety and stress. So she
It's not
sees
spontaneous. It's been 4 days.
Responsive.
I'm going to have to manage him. Yeah.
Exactly. So there's this lack of wanting and liking, but the anticipation typically is bringing the anxiety. Mm-hmm. Oh, I see. It's been 5 days, and he's closing in on himself, or he's starting to get irritable. We're going to have sex. How am I going to prep for this? Mm-hmm. And there's no way for the anticipation to be seen as, oh, I do want this, or this is going to be pleasurable. So we're trying to address each one of those as it goes through. Do you need to feel more pleasure during it? You don't like sex because it's not pleasurable. How can we start this wanting? I love working with individuals when we're talking about the wanting or the anticipation, like you said, the responsive desire. How do we do responsive desire? I constantly work with people to say, let's put it on a calendar. And now, before you jump on my back and say putting things on a calendar is wrong, there's so much spontaneity you can do when it's at the top of your mind.
So that's another piece of this book, that it's completely normal for people to have both spontaneous desire or responsive desire.
Yes.
So as far as our listeners go, to kind of catch you up with this discussion we're having, is that it is completely normal for some of the population to have spontaneous sexual desire, where they cue in and go, that's sexually relevant, and now I'm horny. Mm-hmm. And hey, partner, are you into it? Completely normal. It's also completely normal for another portion of our population to see something sexually relevant, go, that's sexually relevant, and I don't feel horny.
Yeah.
And when the partner says, hey, are you into it? Not at the moment. But the more you talk me into it, the more you touch me into it, all of a sudden now what was sexually relevant becomes something I desire. Mm-hmm. It wasn't spontaneous, but it was responsive. And they find, once we kind of get going, now I find the wanting. And both are completely normal.
Yeah.
That there are people who have spontaneous desire, and there are people who have responsive desire. Mm-hmm. Right?
And I think it's really important to note that in the responsive and spontaneous is, you're not broken.
Totally normal.
We're talking high levels of individuals that are on both sides of the spectrum, men and women, on both. A lot of the times people start putting a gender to it of, spontaneous is men, responsive is women. It may show up more often in women that they're responsive, and may show up more often in men that they're spontaneous, but that doesn't equal a gender divide.
Right. And the more we create the gender divide, the more people are going to believe it, and it's going to get reinforced.
Oh, yeah. And then we've got these men saying, am I a man? I don't really want to. Or women being like, I'm put in a word. And
I have both among my clients.
Yeah, me too.
I have male high desire. I have male low desire. I have female spontaneous. I have female responsive. So
yes,
completely normal.
I think it's important that as we talk about the spontaneous and reflect or responsive, is that as we talk about responsive, it be important that you find the ways that do turn you on. Like we were talking about the context, as well as knowing your body.
I think that's the piece for the wanting. So if the block is at the wanting, I'll usually find that individual has not explored what's worth wanting. Sex has always been kind of in context of the other partner.
Yeah.
So it's hard to want something if you've never let yourself decide, well, what do I want? If it's always been a caretaking activity, if it's always been in relation to managing your partner's sexual anxiety, or if we don't have people who know what they want, they're going to get blocked right there.
True.
In the wanting.
Yeah, I love how you put that. And the anticipation, I guess I work with clients a lot when it comes to anticipation. That I end up calling it. You guys ever seen the Ninja Sex Warrior? Or not Ninja Sex Warrior. I'm sorry. That's what I call it.
That's what you call it. Episode
what is it?
1.
Episode 1. American Ninja Warrior. So you've seen that before. And I
love this
I call it,
analogy of yours.
I did the spoiler alert at the beginning, call it Ninja Sex Warrior. But anyways, Ninja Sex Warrior, I think of it as the same way of, if you think of an obstacle course, just like American Ninja Warrior, they start off at the beginning. Their thing, almost everyone gets through that first one. And then they go to the second, and then third, and then the fourth. And then eventually you're hoping that they get to the top of that wall, hit the button, everyone cheers. It's so exciting. And confetti falls. It's awesome. That is typically how people see sex in this anticipation. Is they're looking out at this course, and they're like, okay, this is what I'm anticipating is going to happen. We're going to, in Ninja Sex Warriors, essentially that first stage might be holding hands, touching, kissing. And then that moves into making out, taking off clothes, touching, moving to penetrative sex.
Predictable progression.
Exactly. Now, the problem is on the bottom, we've got that water of failure that we get to worry about falling into, where everyone's like, oh, shoot. They failed. They didn't
failed.
They didn't hit the O button.
They didn't have an orgasm, and so they failed.
Orgasm. Yes. There's so much in the anticipating that individuals will actually not engage. Nope, don't want to go that way. I know I'm going to fall at the big wall, or I know I'm going to fall at, I don't want to make out. I just don't want to make out. All I want to do is cuddle. So I'm going to shut this thing down.
Or the idea that that's where the pleasure lies, is only orgasm focused, instead of seeing it as there is pleasure all around the journey to that. And that is also worth having and wanting.
Yes.
So I love this. She keeps reinforcing throughout the book, you're normal. You've got all the same parts as everyone else. They're just organized differently. We've all got a separate, unique set of brakes and accelerators, and knowing your partner's matters, and knowing your own matters. And the goal is to, first let's lighten up on those brakes, because you might have accelerators happening and you don't even realize it. We've got to lighten up these brakes for sure. Context matters. We've got these three things that go into context: anticipation, wanting, and pleasure. And then she kind of moves into this idea of, now, before we get too far, let's stop talking about our sex drive as a sex drive.
Yes.
In the middle of the book, she's like, and let's address this.
Yes.
Before we go too much further.
And I love that she did that. Because sex is not a drive. A drive we're talking about is hunger, or going to the bathroom, or something
things that keep us alive.
Yes, absolutely. You don't do either of those, you don't survive. I don't know of anyone that's died of being sex starved.
We don't. It might hurt, but we may
you might
not
get
die.
Irritable. I know a lot of people get irritable, but you don't die.
But we're not going to drive. So it is not a drive, a biological drive, as far as survival is concerned. And so she kind of, let's not be overly dramatic about the role sex can play in our relationships.
Yes.
Takes a little bit of pressure off for some of us to rethink about this. Yes, it's important, but we're not going to die. So let's figure out how we're going to manage it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when you're talking about also sex being normal, or like us being normal when we're with our desires with sex, and we're talking about it not being a drive, that is normal. Like, we're going to have a desire or not a desire. One of the things that I loved about the myths, she pulled out some myths in the book, that one of the myths I really want to get to is that great sex is the same for everyone. This is where I want to pull that normal out.
Please do.
Great sex, people consistently will talk to me, I think in couples mostly, even if they're not in the session for a couple. I consistently have male-bodied individuals talking about, if they're talking about sex and their partner's like, oh, don't worry, I always take care of my wife. She always has an orgasm. And I'm like, ooh, does she always want an orgasm? Because that can be problematic. Same within a couple of homosexual relationships where there's this orgasm thing that comes up that's like, oh, I'm a good lover because I make sure every time we have sex, my partner wants to have an orgasm. Do they want to have an orgasm every time? That is such a concept that is so hard.
Or did they enjoy it? Because it is possible to have an orgasm and to not have enjoyed what happened.
Absolutely.
The context of the situation.
Absolutely. Especially if what a person may be desiring and liking is the fact of feeling close. I can't tell you how many times I've had individuals, both men and women, say my favorite part is when we're kissing and holding each other, and I feel so fulfilled, and I love it, and I love when my partner experiences blank, and I'm good.
And that's enough.
I didn't, and then it came to this, I had to have an orgasm, and then I felt stress, and I felt pressure, and I felt performance anxiety, and that's when things just get bad.
And isn't that kind of the opposite of consent if we make sure our partner has to do something?
Yeah, it starts turning into...
That's not consensual.
No.
That's yucky.
Yeah, that's not, and that is assuming that Cosmopolitan and the 5,000 ways to have the mind-blowing orgasm or best sex of your life for your partner. I think that we've grown up in a society that is saying if you don't have mind-blowing sex or your partner doesn't have an orgasm, you will be left. And then we start talking about attachment. Mm-hmm. Because really, if we're afraid of being left, we're going to make sure our partner has an orgasm every single time without asking them, because it's just something that they need to have in order for us to remain a partnership.
Because love means sex.
Because love means sex.
We've taken the
orgasm.
Context out of it. We've taken the brakes and accelerators out of it. We've really reduced it to a way that we are personally threatened if it doesn't look a certain way.
Yeah. And she says the thing that matters the most is how you feel about the sexual experience, how you feel about your body parts, how you feel about what is happening.
Yeah, she says what matters more is not your sexuality, but how you feel about your sexuality. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't really matter if you're high desire or low desire compared to your partner. It's how do you feel about that?
Yes.
And if you're really threatened that your partner isn't at the same level as you, well, that's a big deal. If you're like, oh no, we're going to, become the experts of each other and this is something we problem solve together, I'm not threatened by this at all. Even though the same thing exists, how you feel about it matters more.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And this comes up with, especially when we're looking at our bodies, I love that you bring it up. Am I at risk or am I safe? Mm-hmm. If I don't feel safe, then I'm at risk. And the body's responding to that. This can happen specifically, I'm thinking of with women, but also with men. When I think of the erection, there's so many partners that think that their partner's erection is the sign of love and how good the relationship is. And when there's a loss in an erection, panic ensues.
Yeah, and that's an education piece where it's like, no, it's totally normal for a penis to go erect and flaccid throughout a period of time. I had this conversation last week in my office because they didn't understand that the blood flow into the penis then stayed there. And it's like if you wrap something tight around your finger, it's going to start to hurt. That blood is not oxygenated. Mm-hmm. And so it goes, oh, okay, I've had a lot of blood in one place for a long time. We've got to oxygenate this blood so it becomes flaccid again. They may still be really enjoying the experience, but you know what? We've got to oxygenate the damn blood. and those outer cues are not reliable of whether or not you're having an enjoyable experience.
Yeah, it's not whatsoever. Yeah. The erection of the penis typically shows a desire and a want, and it's within that in the body. However, there is stress, there are feelings, there are thoughts. If you are not feeling safe or if your body is just not having its time, there's also health issues that can be going on. Yes. Having erectile issues, and we're talking every single time you're unable to get your penis erect, that's a sign that you might be having heart issues. So go to the doctor. Go get things figured out.
It's not an indicator of they're wanting you.
Mm-hmm. But if we can be silly and just relax, we want to move into relaxation, not, oh my gosh, do you not love me? Are you with another partner? Or, oh my gosh, I didn't have an erect penis anymore. Like I went flaccid and now I am. Now I'm panicked. I've got to show you that I love you, or maybe I've got erectile dysfunction, and I'm stressed about if I've got erectile dysfunction, when it's just relax and enjoy what is happening.
And on the other side, are you threatened by a partner's erection and it's not you?
Yeah.
We're looking at brakes and accelerators saying, okay, Charlize Theron may be one of my accelerators, but I am able to use wisdom and not choose an affair. I have a lot of women threatened by erections that aren't in their direction.
Erections not in their direction. I like that.
And we've got to, get a little bit of science that say, hey, there might have been the interest, but there wasn't the wanting in that 3-phase piece that we just talked about. They didn't want to go have an affair, even though there was some anticipation that there was something sexually relevant. And so we can't use our partner's genital functioning as indicators of the relationship.
No, we can't do that. And I also think it's really important that as we're talking about this, not indicating that there's so much. She talks about in the book, I love her analogies of the garden, where she's talking about our sexual health being a garden where there are teachings that are weeds. There are things that we want, like in my garden, I would have tulips and I would have jalapenos and things like that. Like, that's what I want in my garden. But there's also going to be dandelions and morning glory and things like that I didn't really want there, but have been planted by other people, by society, by religion, everything else. And because we're at that state, it's really important to understand that your partner and yourself have beliefs that are inaccurate, have thoughts that are inaccurate, have beliefs and desires that are accurate, but we're all complex. We can't just assume that we know what is going on with your partner, and there could be sexual abuse. There could be things that we've talked about beforehand that cause stress, cause anxiety, and we may not even know that that's what they're going through, and then we're adding more stress onto it, being like, why aren't you performing? Is it me? And that just doesn't work.
No, it doesn't work. And I love her analogy about the garden. She'll use succulents, and she's like, versus tomatoes, You don't treat them the same. You don't give a tomato plant the same amount of water that you give a succulent. You know, because one needs a lot and one doesn't need very much. Neither of them are right or wrong. It's about learning our uniqueness and knowing exactly what we need to flourish, and knowing that as an individual, and then allowing our partner, to share that information and to cultivate it if we want. And so that is an awesome analogy. I love her garden analogy.
Yeah. There's so much information to cover in this book that it's just, we're barely scratching the surface going over just what the main points are. But I'm curious, Cami, what do you see that might be hard for some of your clients or some people to internalize in this book?
Okay, so this is my most recommended book. And depending on who I'm giving it to, I'm curious how they'll receive it. The first chapter, for some who are fairly uncomfortable talking about sexuality, she's like, I wish vulvas were everywhere. I wish there were billboards of vulvas. And people who are not even comfortable with the word vulva, I know, okay, I'm like, this might push you a little bit because it's going to normalize some things that you've really not wanted to normalize. And I've had that with religious clients, but I've also had that with clients that weren't religious but were raised quiet. It was not a topic of conversation. Not for a moral reason, but for it was uncomfortable or it was private. And so we don't even talk about it. So just getting really comfortable, that's the first hang up I've had some clients have to push through is, okay, we are actually going to have the conversation I've been trying to avoid for 40 years. And the pictures, some people are so mind blown about the difference in genitalia, and it's the first time they've looked or sought after visual information. Other part that I find has been hard to internalize maybe has been from a partner, higher desire partner. All this information, I think it can be heartbreaking to be like, why didn't I know this sooner? I've been taking this so personally. We've been making this so painful. This has been like our private crucifix in our relationship. And why didn't I know this? Like, why is this not in our schools? Why is this not in our homes? Why are we not talking about this? What if we'd had this information sooner?
Yeah.
And there's kind of this heartbreak of, we didn't have to hurt this long. We're both completely normal, and we can really fix a lot of this, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So I think those are some things that get hard. The two hards I've seen with clients trying to internalize this information. What about you?
Yeah, I think that the ones that come up for me, for people I've worked with, is I typically work with very conservative individuals, whether it be religious or orthodox in their belief systems, and masturbation tends to come up. And in this book, she talks a lot about self-exploration.
Self-exploration.
Yes, and masturbation.
And there's going to be a big block to making that worthwhile or even morally okay.
Absolutely. So that comes up, and I encourage each person that I refer this book to. It's like, okay, if your values are we don't masturbate, I encourage to relook at that value as of right now, because typically we've grown up in our values are we don't masturbate, and then we have sex after marriage. Okay, so if that's what you grew up with, if that's the typical thing that you grew up with, then we have some residue. We have, again, a part of a plant that's in our garden that we're like, is that still a part of what I want in my garden? If it is, wonderful. How are we going to manage through that? If it's not, now we've got to work through, what does masturbation look like within my relationship? What's our relationship agreement?
Absolutely.
Is it okay if I masturbate with a partner in the room? So I can just kind of learn and explore, and they're learning and exploring. I encourage people to look at it instead of a black and white, I masturbate or I don't, it's what and in what context is this okay? So I can learn what is good for me. Can I use a vibrator? Because that helps heighten some of those sensations.
You're bringing to mind a client that, you know how some clients are like special?
Special?
In your heart?
Oh, like, yes. I was like, what kind of special are we talking about?
No, like you grow very fond of.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm thinking of this experience with a certain individual who grown up very religious. Masturbation was not okay. She's 35, never had an orgasm. And so when you're talking about brakes and accelerators, and what I like is like, I don't even know. And when you talk about the wanting, it's like, I don't even know. And so the way we broached that was, well, what is the goal? If the goal is to bring goodness into the relationship, can you trust yourself to know, try to say, I might do some exploration, but my internal authority is going to tell me, oh, nope, I didn't, that wasn't great, that wasn't good. Or your internal authority say, I think I'm still a good person.
Yeah.
You know, and can you lean in and let your own internal authority guide that? Because the goal isn't selfishness or these kind of Puritan ideas that the anti-masturbation movement was in response to, the Puritan ideas of pleasure and selfishness and physical degradation. And when we look historically at where these ideas came from, that's where it's coming from, right? It's all historical as well as contextual. Yes. And she came back and was in tears. It was like, I had no idea my body could do that.
Wow.
Like, it's not what I thought it was. But I'm actually grateful to my higher power now. And now we can incorporate it into our marriage. And I had to make this one small hurdle that I was resistant to over years and years in order to get to the goodness that I was wanting.
Yeah.
And so reframing that was a really cool memory that I have of working with certain clients.
Yeah, that's great. I think that each person is going to go through that. Some will experience something like that. Some are going to say, I don't even want to touch that.
We can work with that.
Yeah, you work with it. So masturbation is one. She talks a lot about it in understanding and exploring. And I think the second one is I get partners coming going, great, so the book just said everyone's normal and this is what my relationship's going to look like forever. No.
You didn't finish the book.
And so it's...
Did you stop at chapter 3? Okay.
Exactly. How far did we go? But partners tend to look at this and go, great, so responsive is normal, and that's fine, and we shouldn't change. So now my relationship's going to stay the same. And that's not the case. We just want to be able to look at it and go, okay, this gives us context. This gives us a way to speak about it. Let's start talking about ways that we can take breaks off, that we can make the context great. It may not involve spontaneous this way, but we need to recognize what is real in your relationship and then work with your relationship, which is unique, so that you can have the sexual health and the sexual connections that you want to have. And that involves some adapting. Mm-hmm. That's what I would say to those. Those are the two main things that I see coming up that way, and some of the ways to address them. Yeah.
So, Braxton, what do you wish, like, this is your most recommended book. This is my most recommended book. What do you wish clients knew coming into your office from this? If the whole world read this book, what would change?
Oh, where they come into my office. I think that I wish that everyone knew coming into the office that the normal thing is really important, and that they were going to find their sexual experience. Sweet spot. Yeah, the what is theirs. I think most people come in looking for me to say, oh, this is what the round square looks like. I said that weird, but this is what the round shape looks like, and we're going to fit you into it. Like a round...
I got you.
I screwed that up big time.
I totally got you.
But that's normal to screw it up like that. Anyways, I'm essentially saying that you don't need to be put into what sex has been taught to you your whole life. If you're supposed to feel this way, sound this way, have sex this way. But we're going to walk into this and go, what do you want? What does this look like? And how are both of you going to change and manage this relationship? You're coming in as individuals. You're unique. Your relationship's unique. Let's treat it that way versus trying to make it look like what your friends say or what you see on social media or what you see in the movies, because all of that is through a lens of what other people want you to see.
Right.
Or through pornography, because that's still just a part of the media.
It's just fiction.
Yep. That's what I wish that everyone knew coming into my office.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I kind of wish, if I had a wish, if Braxton were the genie that could make wishes come true, I would want every woman at 17 to get this book downloaded into their brain.
Oh, I love that idea.
I think it would radically shift women's experience with their body, with exploration, with their college years, with early marriage. I just wish I could download this book into every 17-year-old girl's brain. Mm-hmm. I think it would change the world.
Yeah, I agree.
The feminist in me is kind of speaking out, but...
No, I'm totally with you, and this is why I do Birds and Bees podcast, is to significantly help parents start this, hopefully even before 17. I'd love to have everyone getting this around the age of 12, but I get what you're saying there with the 17, like right
when
before
they're
we're
about
getting
to launch, if they've got a full basis of education, right? And then even if your value base is still abstinence-based, to have this book going in, no matter what the value, whether the value is honesty, whether the value is abstinence, whether the value is safety, whatever packet of values you're operating from and your hopes for your daughter before they I have a 17-year-old. So maybe that's why I want that.
Bingo. There we go. I was like, man, 17, that's
I'm projecting.
Oddly specific.
She's about to turn 17. I'm so projecting that I want her to know this, because there can be so many foundational hurts for uneducated women around sexuality leading into early years of relationships. And if I could just wipe that away for a lot of us.
Well, there's so much that goes into women leaning on men for their sexual. It's like, oh, we're gonna have sex and it's just for men.
That is the lie I want to. That is the lie. If I could wipe away any lie, it would be that.
Yep.
That, you know what, honey, you stay cute, and someday a man's going to awaken your sexuality, and they're going to teach you everything. It's going to be great. That's the one I want to delete.
Yes, for so many reasons.
Yeah, so many reasons.
Well, overall rating of the book, what would you put it at?
Oh my gosh. Well, yeah, it's, what's our scale?
Well, yeah, we got to figure out the scale. Do we do out of 10 stars, 5 stars?
Our sexy book club.
Yeah, how sexy is this book?
sexy is this book?
I'd say this book is a 5 sexy out of 5 sexy.
I would too. This is a must read.
Absolutely. I don't say that about books because I'm not a huge book fan.
It's a must read.
It is, yes, you have to.
For the general population.
In fact, we require all of our therapists at the healing group to read this book before being.
You?
Yes. Everyone needs to read this book. It is a baseline knowledge.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a must read for everybody.
Yeah. Among other books they have to read, but this is on the list of things they have to read before being hired.
Way to go, healing group.
Yeah, they rock it.
All right, Braxton. So
if people have questions or comments, or when you read this book, me and Cami want to hear what you have to say.
Do. You can email me at Cami@CamiHurst.com.
Yes, and you can reach me at birdsandbeespodcast@gmail.com. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I said that right. birdsandbeespodcast@gmail.com. And, or you can catch me on Instagram, Birds and Bees Podcast, Twitter, any of these places. If you have questions, send them out that way. In fact, I have a texting and phone call thing that you can also, if you'd like to do it in words, all you have to do is call 385-449-1818. It goes straight to voicemail. Leave a voicemail saying, "Oh my gosh, this book was awesome," or "I think you guys got this one. You needed to say this on the show." You can also text, and then we're going to bring these up in other episodes of what your experience is. Yeah.
So you guys, thank you for coming on this journey with us. This was our first episode of the Sexy Book Club, a collaboration between Sex Therapy 101 and the Birds and Bees podcast. The goal is every fourth Tuesday, we're going to release one of these. And so next month, what you're going to want to read is the book called Better Sex Through Mindfulness. It's written by Lori Barato. So read that book, send in your questions or your comments, and then next month, look for us with that one.
So excited for it. This is another right up there with a must read, but it's another part of the work I do. So I'm excited for us to get to that book.
Thanks, Braxton.
Thank you, Cami.
Thanks, listeners. We'll catch you soon.